Hey guys, this is going to be a review of Reign Season 2, Episode 18, Reversal of Fortune. It's been almost 3 months since I've done a video review of Reign, so that's kind of bad. I didn't mean for that to happen. I haven't, been posting that many videos recently because school is insane right now, but I have been reviewing all of the episodes on my blog, and it just came back from a slight hiatus, so there's that too, but yeah, it feels like forever. And obviously the biggest thing happening in the show right now is Francis almost dying, and I'm gonna probably save talking about that for the end of this later on, since it's kind of the big thing. But I do have to say that at the end of the last episode, when that started happening, was it the last episode or was it the episode before that? I think it was the last episode. I got really worried, because obviously historically that is how Francis died, and Reign has never been historically accurate at all, and it's not surprising that it isn't now either, but at the time I was really worried that he was going to die, because obviously that's what happened historically, and kind of not exactly like that, but I'm happy he's alive, and I feel like that was obviously done on purpose, but I was worried for a while there that he was going to die, and I actually for a while could have seen them doing that. It would have been, it wouldn't have necessarily been conventional to kill off Francis, I don't think, but it would have made it more interesting if they had done that, in my opinion. Not that I necessarily wanted it to happen, but I am happy that he's alive. Still really dislike Conde a lot. I don't like that there's a love triangle. I don't like how this story is being played out. I just really don't like Conde. I still am not entirely sure what it is about Conde that I dislike so much, but there's something about him that I really dislike, and I just, if he left the show, I would be okay with that, is all that I'm going to say. But I don't really see them doing that. I don't know. I feel like they're going to keep him around for at least through the end of season 2. And then kind of maybe there's a potential for him to leave after that, ending that whole love triangle. The first season had the Mary, Francis, Bash love triangle, and then this love season is a different love triangle, which would kind of get old if they kept doing that. It's kind of old now, to be completely honest, because I hate this love triangle so much. Going back a little bit to the potential of Francis dying, there's also the potential of Mary going back to Scotland, which would have had to have an almost complete cast switch. I guess her ladies would I don't know if they would have to go back. What does happen? That's actually an interesting question, because I have no idea how this works. What would happen if Mary went back to Scotland? What would happen to Kenna, who's married to Bash, who's in France, but she's Mary's lady, and I don't know. It would have been really interesting to have seen how they did that, and for a while I did wonder if she was going to go back to Scotland, because again, that would have been something unexpected and interesting. Now I'm not so sure that that's going to happen. I don't necessarily want it to happen, because that would be an almost entire, you'd have to almost entirely switch up the cast, and Conde would probably be one of the ones that stuck around, and I don't want that. But I still, it would be an interesting move to make on the show's part, but I don't really see it happening at this point, even though they're still kind of teasing that potential. Not so much anymore now that Mary's determined that she's going to stay with Francis, but I guess the option's still kind of there, and they could still kind of do it, but I don't think they're going to. Carissa finally came back, and which is great, because that was a huge just loose thread that we had in the show, and at this point I was kind of wondering if she would ever show up again, so I am happy that they brought her back, but at the same time it seems I don't know how I feel about them bringing her back for exactly one episode and then killing her off. And Bash and the healer lady whose name I can't remember, she says to Bash that he did her Clarissa a favor because he saved her from suffering later on, which raises a lot of like philosophical questions that could get to like, I mean, that sort of thing could start a very heated debate, but I'm not gonna get into that. But like, just from a story standpoint of being like, oh, well, we have her and we hinted that she was alive a long time ago and then she just disappeared, and now we're going to bring her back for this one episode like a long time later and just kill her in that episode to get rid of her, just kind of doesn't seem like the most, I don't know, not well thought out, but it just seems off a bit. I do think that it would have been more interesting to keep her around in the story, because it just raises up so many like questions of how they're going to deal with her and like what's going to happen to her and how people treat her and things like that. And now she's just dead, and no one but Bash even knows that she died, and the other lady who knows no one at court. So yeah. Kind of interesting to me though that Clarissa's death is kind of used as like an excuse for Francis living, and it's like almost like a miracle / magic god or something, and that kind of like influence playing a part that wasn't in real history. Because it's like, if you say like magic made it happen, then it's like Rain is set in a, like, you can almost say that Rain is set in a world where magic is real, and so Francis got saved through that and not in real life, which is just like a strange thought that I had. And then Kenna met this general dude who has his own army and answers Narcisse, and he was clearly interested in her, and then completely dropped her once he found out that she was married. But I have a feeling we're going to see him again, because he showed interest in Kenna, and Kenna and Sebastian are having all of their marriage problems now, and then he works for Narcisse, and I feel like he's going to come up again and play a role and everything. I'm not so sure that I like him. There's just something iffy about a guy who's like, oh, I'll help you get back to the castle, you should be safe, and then as soon as he finds out that the girl's married, he just dumps her on someone else. Like, doesn't exactly sound like the greatest person. But, and that he works for Narcisse, which obviously for Narcisse though, there was a bit more development of him and Catherine's relationship. I don't even know if I should call it a relationship. This kind of creeps me out, mostly because Narcisse creeps me out, and the idea of Narcisse with anyone creeps me out. Like, I talked about how much I hated the stuff with him and Lola, and just, it's kind of weird that like Narcisse keeps getting like jerked around. Like, there was the whole thing with Lola and it seemed like kind of genuine, but then it just stopped, and then there's the whole thing with Catherine that seems kind of genuine, and I have no idea if it is genuine, because that seems, if like Narcisse, because it kind of hints that Narcisse has like real feelings for them, but then it jumps around a lot, like between women a lot, and I'm not entirely sure how much of it is genuine, how much of it is faked, and even if it is genuine, it's kind of strange that he like does that. Like, he can't stick to one person, granted that he's not like, he never really has that much luck with them from like a relationship standpoint. But it's just weird. I don't like any of the relationships with Narcisse. Greer and Leith were cute in this episode. They're hardly together at all, but they're always adorable, and they're like the only happy couple that we have right now, which is nice. And I really liked that. But then Leith was with Claude more than Greer in this episode, which is interesting. Like, the whole fact that he's been put like in charge of watching her, and everything and the time that they're spending together makes me feel like they might do something in that route. Like, she does say something about like being with him or whatever at the very end of the episode, and then he tells her that he's with Greer, but I still, which kind of like closes that almost, but I still feel like that's a potential way that they could go, and I'm not sure that I want them to, because I mean, Greer and Leith are the only like happy couple right now, and I love them, and they deserve to be happy forever. And I'm not opposed to them having like an interesting storyline in some other way, such as the fact that Greer can't get an annulment. Like, that's interesting enough and has an opportunity for enough drama on its own that I really hope they don't do a love triangle with Claude. And plus, Claude has like other potential romantic interests in the show, I think, so I don't want that to happen, and I'm a bit worried they're going to do that, but I'm not sure. First, we have like the biggest part of this episode, which is that Francis wakes up and lives, which is great. I'm happy that he's alive, although I talked a bit about my exact feelings on that earlier. But then he also he decides to send the troops to Scotland and leave France unprotected, which I thought was great, and I loved that part. I love that he did that, and I expected him to do that. I'm not entirely sure. Everyone, like, Catherine gets so angry at Mary for wanting to do that and like leaving Scotland undefended, but like, I just feel, I know that she is a bit because she feels like Mary just betrayed Francis. I'm not entirely sure how Catherine would feel if that hadn't just happened, but at the same time, Francis and Mary are married and they rule Scotland and France. Like, obviously France is like Francis's country and Scotland is Mary's technically, but when they're married, they're like jointly ruling the two countries, and that does make Scotland Francis's responsibility at least as much as France is Mary's. And so telling Mary, like, when she married Francis, like, France became her home and France should be what she's worried about is stupid, because she was born the Queen of Scotland, or she was born the Princess of Scotland, but she's now Queen, and like, Scotland is hers the way France is Francis's. And obviously, like, if they're allowing for the fact that Francis has to put France before Scotland, then in that same way they should know that Mary has to put Scotland before France. Like, it's the same thing. And so obviously she's going to send troops to Scotland, and I don't think that you can really fault her for that any more than you would fault Francis for protecting France over Scotland. It's because it's the same sort of idea, but at the same time they're both ruling both countries now together as long as they're married, and so that means that like Francis does have some responsibility to protect Scotland and not just let it get taken over. So that whole thing, like, I don't feel like there's a good argument there. Like, you can argue that it's not a good move strategically or whatever, but you can't just say like, oh, well, Mary chose France and so she has to put France first, because if you were saying, like, she's the Queen of Scotland and that's her country and it's always going to be her country, and if you're thinking that way, then Francis would have to think the same way about Scotland, and that annoys me. So that was a bit longer of a rant about that than I planned for it to be, but I think that is all. This honestly wasn't my favorite episode. It did have some good points, I think, but there was also some parts about it that I wasn't happy about, and obviously the whole, like, getting angry at Mary for trying to protect the country that she rules and is supposed to protect got annoying to me. But I am looking forward to next episode and seeing what happens, especially now that the whole Francis death scare is over. So I'm not really sure what's going to happen next episode, but it will be interesting, and I will see you guys later. Bye!